shall not murder. You shall not murder. The nation of Israel was to be very different than the nations around them. The nations around them were the Canaanites, and these were nations that had the worship of Molech within their boundaries. A lot of the people worshipped the false god Molech. And this is what is said in Leviticus chapter 20, verses 2 and 3. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Say to the people of Israel, any one of the people of Israel, or of the strangers who sojourn in the land of Israel, who gives any of his children to Molech, shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. I myself will set my face against that man, and will cut him off from among his people, because he has given one of his children to Molech, to make my sanctuary unclean, and to profane my holy name." What on earth is this verse talking about? Giving a child to Molech. What do you think that means? The Canaanites were so sinful, they were so bad, that they would sacrifice their own children by fire to the idolatrous god Molech, in order to manipulate this god into doing what they wanted this god to do. They would sacrifice their own children. Israel was not to follow after them. Israel was not to have anything to do with this sort of thing. And if someone in Israel did sacrifice their child to Molech, then the penalty was severe. They themselves would be killed. Israel should have eliminated this form of idolatry during the time of Joshua. They should have stamped out this form of idolatry completely, but they failed to eliminate this kind of idolatry from the land, and this is something that continued on in history, even into the time of the Romans. There is a historian whose name is Cleotarchus, and he talks about the Phoenician colony of Carthage much, much later on in history, where they continued this practice. And this is what he wrote. "There stands in the middle a bronze statue of the god Kronos, its hands extended over a bronze fire pit, the flames of which engulf the child. When the flames fall upon the body, the limbs contract, and the open mouth seems almost to be laughing, as the shrunken body slips quietly into the fire pit. So this smile is known as mocking laughter, since they die laughing." It's one of the worst descriptions of human sin that you can find anywhere in the ancient world. Aren't you glad that we don't kill kids anymore? Last year worldwide there was an estimated 42 million abortions. Last year there was an estimated 42 million abortions. The Alan Guttmacher Institute, which does statistical research into this sort of thing, says that one of the main reasons that women abort their children is this: they are concerned about how the baby will change my life. That's what they say. We no longer sacrifice children to the god Molech, but we do sacrifice them to the god of convenience. All human life is sacred, no matter how young and no matter how old. The Bible teaches that the baby in a womb is a real human life. And to kill a baby in the womb is to murder a human being. There are a couple of verses that I will look at with you. The first of those is in Exodus chapter 21. And we'll be looking at verses 22 to 25. Exodus 21, beginning in verse 22. "When men strive together and hit a pregnant woman, so that her children come out, but there is no harm, the one who hit her shall surely be fined, as the woman's husband shall impose on him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. But if there is harm, then you shall pay life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, and stripe for stripe. These verses are talking about a situation where two men are fighting with each other. And there's this pregnant woman that's standing nearby. And as she's standing nearby, one of the men hits her accidentally. And as a result of this, one of two things could happen. I should say this. And then they say the baby comes out. So, first of all, we need to talk about what come out means. What is it talking about when it says, her children come out? The word that is translated come out in this verse is the normal word for birth. It's the same word that is used when Jacob was born in Genesis chapter 25. So when an Israelite was talking about a baby being born, they would say, and yesterday at 8 o'clock, the baby came out and it was 8 pounds and 6 ounces. They would say something like that. The normal word for a baby coming out is the one that is used here. And the word children used here, talking about a children coming out. The word children that is used here is for a baby that has been born. It's not talking about a miscarriage in this situation. There is another word that would have been used for a miscarriage. And that is a word that you can see in Genesis chapter 31. And so here's a situation that Moses is asking people to imagine. He's saying these men are fighting. They hit a pregnant woman, and this blow causes her to give birth early. And he says that one of two things is going to happen. Either there's going to be no harm done, and that means no harm to the mother or to the child, or it is going to result in harm, where the baby or the mother dies. If there is no harm that is done, where mother and baby are okay, then there's going to be a fine. There's going to be some sort of a fine that's determined by the judge. The judge is going to decide what is fair in this situation. And so these two guys have been doing something that's very unwise. They have done something that has put a pregnant woman and her child into danger, and so there's a fine that's to be paid, even if the baby comes out and everything is okay. Even if there's no harm to the baby. But if there's harm, then there must be a punishment that is similar to what the men caused. And if these men caused death to the mother or to the child, then they are to be considered murderers. And they're to receive a murderer's penalty. They're to kill themselves. So how does this teach us about abortion? There is an inescapable conclusion you need to come to when you look at these verses. Killing a baby in the womb is murder. It is considered to be a real human life. The baby in the womb is not a blob of tissue, as a lot of people would have you believe. It is not simply the result of conception, as a lot of pro-abortionists would say. It is a human being. It is a valid life. The next passage of Scripture is Psalm 139, verses 13 and 14. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. David is describing himself in his mother's womb. And he does it in very, very personal terms. He is praising God, and he's saying, you formed me in there. When I was still in my mother, I was a wonderful work in your hands. Me, I was. When I was in my mother's womb, I was me. I was a human being. And I was deeply loved by God, even at that point in my life. Psalm 139 and a lot of other passages of Scripture talk about an unborn baby like that baby is a real person. David isn't saying, yeah, there was this time when I was in my mother's womb, and then at some point when I was born or after I was born, then I became a person. He is talking about me. I had an identity when I was inside my mom. I was a real baby. I was a real human